Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro. He is literally everywhere, and he's always reminding us that one,
these are facts, and facts don't care about your feelings.
and two, that he is indeed capable of pleasing his wife.
Whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. Hold up.
Love him or hate him, Ben has gotten so big that I literally can't scroll YouTube without him reminding me of his ability to destroy liberals,
I'm a mathematician and a physicist. You cannot tell me.
his thoughts on the Barbie movie,
This movie is a flaming piece of dog piled atop an entire dumpster on fire, piled atop a landfill with dog.
why I should have saved myself for marriage,
Waiting until you're 35 and have slept with 50 women? That is a terrible recipe for marriage by every available data point.
and just how annoying Kamala Harris is. The fact is, Ben is controversial, but in a world where everybody is coddled, controversy sells. With over 4,500 uploads, millions of subscribers and followers, and hated by so many on the left, I'm interested in the insane rise of Ben. Why is he so controversial? Where the heck did he come from? And perhaps most importantly, how much money is he actually making? Liberals, you're going to want to grab your gender neutral tissues for this one, because this is the insane billion-dollar rise of Ben Shapiro. Do you remember that kid in high school that was just naturally good at everything? The kid who played all the sports, was on the debate team, won all the academic awards. We've all got one. But the thing is, usually after high school, you don't really hear a lot about them. Did they peak in high school?
I am McLovin.
Did they actually go on to do great things? The thing about Ben is that there is no doubt that he was this kid. He was the kid that everybody secretly envied. But what's most incredible about his story is that we know everything. Unlike most people who enter the public eye once they become successful, Ben has been in the public eye since the very beginning. He skipped both grade 3 and grade 9, but that's not even the most impressive part. Let's backtrack. It's 1996 and Ben is 12 years old. While most 12-year-olds are starting to chase after girls or just noticing them for the first time, Ben was playing the violin in front of Larry King. So if you're not a big fan of Ben and you are hoping to watch this video to feel a little bit better about yourself, unfortunately, I have bad news for you. At just 5 years old, Ben began toying with the idea of becoming a professional violinist.
I'm a violinist. I'm a violinist from the age of 5. I haven't practiced extensively for probably, at this point, 6 or 7 years, which is really unfortunate. When I was a kid, I thought I was going to go to Peabody School of Music at Johns Hopkins, and I studied with one of the top 10 violin teachers in the world. I was actually a world-class violinist at one point. I decided you have to make a commitment at a certain point as a kid. If you really want to be world class, like soloing with orchestras world class, you have to practice 6, 7.
By skipping 2 grades, Ben would start going to UCLA at just 16 years old. Now I know what you're thinking, poor Ben, 16-year-old in college, the dating scene must have been pretty tough for him, but don't worry, things did work out okay for him. I'm not sure if you've heard, but his wife is in fact a doctor.
Wife a doctor?
So the rumor is that she is. My wife's a doctor. My wife is a doctor. My wife's a doctor. My wife's a doctor. My wife's a doctor. My wife is a doctor. My wife's a doctor. My wife's a doctor. My wife is a doctor. My wife is a doctor. My wife is a doctor.
Ben would go on to graduate at just 20 years old. By 21, he had already published 2 books, officially cementing his start of his liberal roasting career. And by 23, he had graduated from Harvard Law. Having a Harvard Law degree pretty much means that you can see how the rest of your life is going to go. Ben would go on to make associate early on. He was making over $150,000, but the thing is, he was absolutely miserable.
I bought a condo in preparation for us getting married and moving in, and so we took a mortgage. And then I came home one day and I just said, this is miserable. This is the worst. I hate this law firm. I don't want to be doing this. It's garbage. And she said, you should quit. And so we have a mortgage and we have costs. And she said, I don't care. You should quit. You're miserable. You should quit. And so I said, okay. And so I went in the next day and I quit.
And this is where our story really begins. Nowadays, liberals tend to be scared of a lot of things.
I was going to put him,
like not having a weak enough border, climate change, people who don't wear masks.
Karen, please just wear a mask, you big dumbass.
And of course, Donald Trump.
Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans pose a clear and present danger to our democracy.
But the date they should really fear is November 1st, 2016, because that is the day that Ben launched his YouTube channel. Since then, he has uploaded over 4,500 times. He's done it all, from debating Piers Morgan.
You've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
To being threatened on live TV.
So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
Well, no,
what
no.
are your genetics? Sir?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
And even breaking down some of our finest pop culture moments.
I'm so hesitant to read the lyrics to this thing out loud. It's gonna be even more memeable. Quit playing, N-word. Come suck a toe. Well said. My favorite part of this is where she actually opens applications for a stepfather for her child. So she's like, I'm out here in Miami looking for the hoochie daddies. Where they at? Where the N-words? Get that ratchet. Where they at? My son need a new pappy. This all seems like an amazing way of capturing an excellent father for your son.
Between all of these viral moments, Ben has built a massive cult-like following with over 6 million YouTube subscribers, 6 million Twitter followers, and over 4 million people following him on Instagram. The left often views Ben as this controversial figure, but considering what the mainstream narrative is today and what's actually considered normal, that's not necessarily saying much.
Treasure Valley communities,
The El Paso, Las Cruces communities.
Eastern Iowa communities.
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
In fact, it's actually kind of sad that some of his ideas are considered controversial, and it really goes to show the direction that society is moving in. For example, for all of the talk of generational trauma and poverty, rather than saying we need more government programs, Ben actually offers an incredibly simple solution that will guarantee that you won't be poor in this country.
Here are the steps that are required to be rich. You gotta finish high school, you don't have babies before you get married, you have to get a job. If you do those three things, you will not be permanently poor in the United States by all available metrics and evidence. That's the first step.
And speaking of marriage, how do you find a lifelong partner? Nowadays, people think that you most certainly shouldn't get married before your 30s. You should sleep around, try all the different kinds of flavors that are available. And at the end of the day, the data is showing this. In 1998, on average, men were getting married by 26 and women were only 25. But today, men on average are only marrying at 31 and women at 28. But Ben decided early on to take the exact opposite approach.
You married your wife in 2.5 months. How old
December
were you at the
22nd.
time?
I was 23 when we got engaged, and she was 20.
There's a reason that Jordan Peterson says if you're 40 and single, you're blowing it.
My dad used to make a point about this. He used to say, people would ask him about when to get married. And he said, or how to find the right person. And what he always said is you have to make the decision to get married before you find the right person. Because if you didn't make the decision that you wanted to get married, then the right person could come along and you could just blow them out of the water. You actually have to make we live in a society where we sort of decide the opposite. It's like, I'll fall in love with the person, and then we'll have sex, and then maybe 4 years down the road we'll get married. We've completely reversed the polarity and the order of events. Look at the sitcoms from the 90s versus the sitcoms from the 60s, right? In the 60s it was, you fall in love, you get married, you have sex. Now it's, you have sex, and then it's really hard for you to say if you fell in love with the person, right? That's like the big move in a sitcom now is, did you fall in love? And then you never get married.
If any of this upsets you, I have bad news. We have barely scratched the surface.
And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms.
So I have this thing, call it a little quirk if you will. I have hair in my armpit. I have it there for a few reasons. 1, lazy. 2, the patriarchy. And 3, your response to them tells me everything I need to know about you.
Don't worry, they're not seeking attention. None of these people are seeking attention. It's amazing.
For people who watched this case closely, there are elements here that it's very difficult to make the case to me that any rational jury who just looked at the evidence, would have come to the conclusion that beyond a reasonable doubt, Chauvin was guilty of second or third degree murder. This just did not fulfill the elements. The third degree murder charge particularly is absurd on its face. The third degree murder charge never should have been allowed in the courtroom. It used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true. I think that we need to re-inculcate in men themselves, not just the teach men not to rape routine. Like, again, it's such a weird concept. Like, when I was 11, my dad didn't sit me down and say, son, don't rape people.
Herein lies Ben's genius. Love him or hate him, it is hard to look away. It is easy to click on his videos, and it's easy to get riled up listening to him if you simply don't agree. But this is his genius. He wants you to click, and all of the clicks that he's generating is building him a $1 billion empire. And I'm gonna show you just how much money he's actually making from it.
Have you ever seen that video where it shows local news people all saying like the exact same thing? It's really weird. No. It's one of those things where you go like, I kind of knew that this happened, but to see it happen so blatantly.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
This is scary.
Yeah.
This is the scariest.
Well, that's propaganda. They're trying to bend a narrative in a very specific way for everybody.
This is the mainstream media. From CNN, the New York Times, ABC, NBC, the largest media companies in the world are all left-wing, and their power is immense. CNN's revenue in 2021 was a massive $1.8 billion. The New York Times is worth just under $7 billion. They're massive, and it's not just traditional media companies that lean left. Take Netflix and Disney, for example. Both of these companies are absolutely massive, and they're starting to go woke. Netflix currently has over 230 million subscribers and is worth $153 billion. Disney Plus has over 140 million subscribers, and the company is worth $150 billion. And what do they have in common with the mainstream media?
With your kids, I have pictures of myself with my own parents when I'm a small kid at Disneyland. My fourth date with my wife was at Disneyland. Love Disney products, big Disney fan, up until they decided a few years back that they were going to go completely woke. They were going to move to the left. They were going to start injecting a bunch of LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign messaging into their programming, particularly for kids. And this is despicable stuff.
I don't care what they tell you in school. Cleopatra was black.
All right. And she wasn't black.
And you ain't black.
The woke mind virus is making Netflix unwatchable.
For Ben and conservatives, this isn't just frustrating, but it poses an incredible opportunity, the media opportunity of this generation. Ben first begun to take advantage of this opportunity by launching his podcast in 2015, which is now one of the fastest growing conservative podcasts in the country. Ben could have just stuck to doing his daily podcast under his own name, but he had bigger plans. At the end of the day, one man can only do so much. You can only leverage your own name so much. But what if you could multiply yourself to generate more clicks, more controversy? Well, enter Candace Owens.
People should be allowed to keep their Confederate flags and wave them because it represents an element of history. Virtually every societal ill that we are facing today is because of women. They're saying it's compassionate to allow your child to pick their gender.
This is where the Daily Wire comes in, a conservative media company that Ben co-launched in 2015. Rather than focusing on only his podcast, the Daily Wire produces a bunch of different podcasts with a bunch of controversial commentators such as Candace Owens, Jordan Peterson, and Matt Walsh.
You know that you're a woman.
Yes.
What is that?
Ben has leveraged and partnered with these influencers to help drive more traffic to the Daily Wire. Hooked by Candace Owens, for $21 a month, you can sign up to see her controversial documentary on George Floyd. What about exclusive content from Jordan Peterson? Again, sign up for the Daily Wire. Want to see the viral documentary on what is a woman? Sign up for the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire has become an entire platform for conservatives, and they're even expanding into original content to compete with Netflix. But the question that's most interesting is how much money is Ben actually making from this? The Daily Wire isn't a public company, so we can't know for sure. We don't know what their revenue is, and we don't know how much of the company Ben actually owns. But I do think that we can actually make a pretty accurate guess. In November 2022, Jeremy Boring, the co-founder of the Daily Wire, said that their revenue exceeded $100 million and they had 150 employees. This was all because the company had surpassed 1 million subscribers for the Daily Wire. It's impressive, but it's not even 1% of Netflix's 230 million subscriber count. But at the end of the day, Netflix was founded in 1998, 17 years before the Daily Wire. So yeah, they've had way more time to grow. So let's run some numbers. No, the Daily Wire and Netflix aren't the exact same company, but they're similar, and I imagine that they would sell at a similar multiple. If you take Netflix's subscribers and divide it by their market cap, each subscriber is worth $665. Using this metric with the Daily Wire's supposed 1 million subscribers, the company would be worth $665 million. But what about revenue? Based on Netflix's 2022 revenue, they're trading at a 4.84 multiple. So if the Daily Wire just surpassed $100 million, using the same multiple, the company would be worth $484 million. So depending on how you cut it, the Daily Wire is likely worth somewhere around $500 million. But unfortunately, that is not all Ben's, and unfortunately also, we don't know how much of the company he actually owns, so if they were to sell, we don't know exactly what his pay cut would be. But what we do know is that Ben and the Daily Wire are rapidly growing. The demand for alternative, conservative media that hasn't gone woke is also growing. And for a company that isn't even 10 years old, it's insanely impressive. And I'm confident that with time and a few more tears from liberals, Ben will hit the $1 billion mark. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Peace.